In the lobby of a five-star hotel, surrounded by international investors, a white female CEO pulled her hand back sharply as a black man in casual clothes approached to greet her. She did not give him a chance to introduce himself. She called security and had him escorted out like an intruder. No one knew the man. The next day, when the truth came out, that same woman stood waiting for hours, begging to see him. Why? Victoria Ashford stood in the center of the hotel conference room, her jaw tight, her hands gripping the edge of the mahogany table. The chandelier overhead cast sharp light across her tailored navy suit. She had not slept well in days. Her company was dying, and she knew it. 2 weeks. That was all the time left before the accounts ran dry. The board had already begun drafting the vote to remove her. 3 years of building her reputation, 3 years of clawing her way to the top of a male-dominated industry, and it could all collapse in 14 days. She had one shot left, one investor. His name had come through a referral, buried in a chain of emails she barely had time to read. Darian Cole. She knew the name carried weight in certain circles, but she had never met him. He was supposed to arrive this morning. She glanced at her watch. 10 minutes late. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, the same words he had drilled into her since she was a child. In the boardroom, never let anyone see you weak. The moment they sense fear, you lose. She straightened her shoulders. She would not lose. Across town, Darian Cole sat on the edge of his daughter's bed, smoothing the blanket over her small frame. Emma's forehead was warm to the touch. Not a high fever, but enough to worry him. She had been up coughing through the night, and he had stayed awake with her, reading stories until her breathing evened out. Now, in the pale morning light, she stirred and opened her eyes. "Daddy, do you have to go?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Darian smiled and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Just for today, sweetheart. I'll be back before dinner. Grandma's coming to stay with you." Emma reached under her pillow and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a drawing she had made the week before, a crayon sketch of the two of them holding hands under a bright yellow sun. "Take this with you," she said, "so you remember to come home." Darian took the drawing and slipped it carefully into his wallet. "I'll keep it safe. I promise." He kissed her forehead and stood. His mother arrived 20 minutes later, and he left for the airport with barely enough time to make his flight. He did not pack a suit. He grabbed a clean shirt, dark jeans, and his worn leather messenger bag. The meeting was important, but it was still just a meeting. He had learned long ago that respect was not something you could buy with expensive clothes. By the time he landed, he was running late. He took a cab straight to the hotel, his phone buzzing with reminders. He checked his reflection in the cab window. Presentable, professional enough. He was not here to impress anyone with appearances. He was here to see if this company was worth his time and his money. When he walked into the hotel lobby, the air was cool and pristine. Investors stood in clusters, speaking in low voices. A few glanced at him as he passed. He did not think much of it. He was used to being underestimated. The conference room was just ahead. He could see a woman standing inside, her back straight, her expression sharp. That must be Victoria Ashford. He approached the open door and stepped inside. She turned at the sound of his footsteps. Her eyes swept over him, shirt, jeans, messenger bag, and something shifted in her face. Not curiosity, not welcome, something colder. Darian extended his hand with a polite smile. "Miss Ashford, She did not take his hand. She looked at it as if he had offered her something unclean. Her gaze moved from his hand to his face, slow and deliberate, and he saw the judgment settle in her eyes. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was clipped, sharp. "This is a private event." Darian kept his hand extended, his smile fading. "I'm here for the meeting. We've been in contact over email. I don't have time for this." She waved a hand dismissively and turned to one of the security guards stationed near the door. "Can you escort this man out? He's clearly lost." The guard hesitated, glancing between them. Darian lowered his hand slowly. He could feel the eyes of the other investors on him now, the quiet shift in the room as people turned to watch. "Miss Ashford," he said, his voice calm but firm. "If you'd just let me explain. I said I don't have time." She raised her voice now, and it carried across the room. "I'm waiting for an important investor,
Kéo anh
and
ta
I
ra khỏi
don't
đây
need
ngay lập tức.
distractions.
Bỏ tay ra.
Please leave."
Anh phải đi với chúng
The
tôi.
guard stepped forward, his hand moving toward Darian's arm. Darian took a step back on his own. He did not need to be touched. He did not need to argue. He had seen this before. He knew exactly what was happening. He stood there for 3 seconds, his hand still hanging in the air between them, then falling slowly to his side. He looked at Victoria, not with anger, but with something deeper. Disappointment, sadness, recognition. "I see," he said quietly. Then he turned and walked out. The room was silent after he left. One of the investors leaned toward another and muttered something under his breath. Victoria did not hear it. She was already moving to the front of the room, checking her notes, forcing herself to focus. The meeting had to go on. She could not afford to waste time on someone who did not belong. 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. Her assistant entered the room, pale and shaking, holding a tablet in trembling hands. "Miss Ashford," the assistant said, barely above a whisper. "That man you just—" "Not now," Victoria snapped. "Where is Darian Cole? He should have been here by now." The assistant swallowed hard. That was Darian Cole. The air left Victoria's lungs. The room tilted. She grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. "What?" The assistant turned the tablet toward her. On the screen was a professional headshot of the man she had just thrown out. Beneath it a headline, "Darian Cole, the billionaire investor who walks away from disrespect." Victoria's hands went cold. She scrolled through the article, her eyes catching fragments of sentences. "Single father. Respect-based investing. Has turned down deals worth billions over ethical concerns. Known for his philosophy. Character before capital." Her phone buzzed. An email. She opened it, her fingers numb. The message was short. "After careful consideration, I'm withdrawing from this opportunity. Best of luck. Darian Cole." She read it twice. Then a third time. The words did not change. She tried calling. No answer. She sent a text. No reply. She called again, her desperation rising with each unanswered ring. Behind her, the assistant spoke again, barely audible. "The board just got the same email." Victoria turned. "What?" "They're calling an emergency meeting. If we lose this investment, we have 10 days before bankruptcy." Victoria sat down heavily in the nearest chair. Her mind was racing, but her body felt frozen. She had just destroyed the only chance her company had to survive, and she had done it in front of a room full of witnesses. In the back of a cab heading to the airport, Darian stared out the window. His phone was buzzing in his pocket, but he did not reach for it. He knew what the calls were about. He knew what the messages would say. He thought about Emma, waiting for him at home. He thought about the drawing in his wallet. He thought about his wife, 3 years gone, and the way a nurse had looked at them both in the hospital emergency room that terrible night. The same look Victoria Ashford had given him today. His wife had been dying, and the nurse had assumed they did not have insurance. She had assumed they would run. She had treated them like they were disposable. His wife died on a bed in that hospital. And Darian learned something he would never forget. Money could buy a lot of things, but it could not buy back the moment when someone looked at you and saw a human being instead of a threat. He pulled out his phone and opened his email. He typed quickly, his thumbs moving with certainty. "After careful consideration, I'm withdrawing from this opportunity. Best of luck." He hit send. Then he opened his messages and texted his mother. "On my way home. Tell Emma I'll be there soon." He put the phone away and leaned back in his seat. The city blurred past the window. He felt tired. Not angry, just tired. He had been here before. He would be here again. But he would not compromise. Not on this. Not ever. Back at the hotel, Victoria sat alone in the conference room. The other investors had left. The lights felt too bright. She opened her laptop and searched for Darian Cole's name. Article after article appeared. Interviews, profiles, a TED Talk titled, "Why Respect is the Foundation of Trust." A photo of him holding a young girl, his daughter, at a charity event for single parents. She clicked on a video. It was an interview from 2 years ago. The host asked him about his investment philosophy. Darian's voice was calm, thoughtful. "I've walked away from $2 billion in deals because the people on the other side didn't treat their employees with dignity. Money without respect is just paper. I'm not interested in paper. I'm interested in building something that lasts." Victoria closed the laptop. Her hands were shaking. She had spent 3 years building power. 3 years proving she belonged. 3 years making sure no one could look at her and see weakness. And in one moment, she had thrown it all away. Not because she was weak, but because she had looked at another human being and decided he did not matter. She thought about the hand he had extended, the smile on his face, the calm in his voice, even as she humiliated him in front of a room full of people. She thought about the way he had walked out. No shouting, no threats, just 2 words. "I see." She understood now what he had seen. Her phone buzzed again. The board. She did not answer. She sat in the empty room, surrounded by the wreckage of her own making, and for the first time in years, she did not know what to do. 2,000 miles away, Darian walked through his front door. Emma was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching cartoons. She turned when she heard him and smiled. "Daddy, you're home." He sat beside her and pulled her into his arms. She rested her head on his chest, and he closed his eyes. "Did your meeting go well?" she asked. Darian opened his eyes and looked down at his daughter. Her innocent face, her trust, her belief that the world was good. He kissed the top of her head. "It taught Daddy an important lesson, sweetheart." She looked up at him. "What lesson?" He smiled softly. "That some things are more important than money." She nodded, satisfied, and turned back to the television. Darian held her close and thought about the drawing in his wallet. The one that reminded him why he did what he did. Why he would never compromise. Why he would always choose dignity over dollars. Because Emma was watching. And the world she would inherit depended on the choices he made today. The news spread faster than Victoria expected. By evening, her phone had become a weapon against her. Messages flooded in from board members, investors who had been in the room, colleagues who had heard whispers. One of the other investors had posted something vague on social media. "Just witnessed something uncomfortable at a business event. Respect matters, folks." No names, no details, but enough. The replies came quickly. Was this about Darian Cole? "I heard he walked out of a deal today. Someone really messed up." Victoria sat in her hotel room, staring at the screen. She had tried calling Darian 17 times. Every call went to voicemail. Every text went unanswered. She had sent emails through 3 different addresses, each one more desperate than the last. Nothing. At 9 o'clock that night, her assistant knocked on the door. Victoria opened it to find the young woman holding a folder, her face drawn with exhaustion. "The board wants to meet tomorrow morning," the assistant said. 6 a.m. Victoria took the folder. Inside were printed copies of articles about Darian Cole, his TED Talk transcript, a profile from Forbes, an interview where he explained why he had once turned down a $2 billion deal from a hedge fund that had fired 300 employees without severance. The assistant lingered in the doorway. "Miss Ashford, for what it's worth, I think he would have been good for us. Everyone says he's fair. Tough, but fair." Victoria looked up. "Everyone except me, apparently." The assistant said nothing. She left quietly, and Victoria closed the door. She did not sleep that night. She read every article twice. She watched the TED Talk 3 times. In it, Darian spoke about his wife, about the night she died, about the nurse who had looked at them both like they were problems to be managed instead of people in crisis. "I learned that night," Darian said in the video, his voice steady and clear, "that how you treat someone when you think they have nothing to offer you, that's who you really are. And I decided I would never do business with people who failed that test." Victoria closed her laptop. The room felt smaller than it had an hour ago. The next morning, the board meeting was brutal. 8 men and women sat around a conference table, their faces carved from stone. They did not yell. They did not need to. The numbers spoke for themselves. 10 days until bankruptcy. 237 employees. 17 major clients who would pull their contracts the moment the company folded. One board member leaned forward, his voice cold. "You had one job, Victoria, one investor. And you threw him out like he was trespassing." Victoria kept her hands flat on the table. "I made a mistake." "A mistake?" Another board member shook her head. "You humiliated a man in front of a room full of witnesses. A man whose entire philosophy is built on respect. Do you understand what you've done?" Victoria's throat tightened. "I'm trying to fix it." "How?" the first board member demanded. "He won't answer your calls. He won't respond to emails. He's gone. And he took our last chance with him." The meeting ended with a vote. If Victoria could not secure another investor within 7 days, she would be removed as CEO. The company would begin liquidation proceedings. She left the building and went straight to the airport. Chicago was cold when she landed. The sky was gray, heavy with clouds that threatened snow. She took a cab to the address she had found online, the headquarters of Darian's investment fund. It was a modest building, far from the glass towers she was used to. The lobby was clean and simple, with plants in the corners and soft lighting overhead. A receptionist sat behind a wooden desk, typing on a computer. She looked up as Victoria approached. "Can I help you?" the receptionist asked. Victoria straightened her jacket. "I'm here to see Darian Cole." The receptionist glanced at her screen. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but Mr. Cole doesn't take walk-ins. If you'd like to schedule a meeting, I can give you his assistant's email." Victoria forced herself to stay calm. "Please, just tell him Victoria Ashford is here. He'll know who I am." The receptionist's expression shifted slightly. Recognition. She had heard the name. She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, then hung up and looked at Victoria with something close to pity. "Mr. Cole is unavailable. You're welcome to wait if you'd like, but I can't guarantee he'll see you." Victoria sat down in one of the chairs near the window. The receptionist returned to her work. The clock on the wall ticked forward. By 8 o'clock in the morning, the lobby had begun to fill with employees arriving for the day. They glanced at her as they passed, some with curiosity, some with indifference. Victoria kept her eyes on the elevator doors. At 10 o'clock, the receptionist brought her a bottle of water. "Are you sure you don't want to come back another day?" Victoria shook her head. "I'll wait." At 12:30, the receptionist offered to order her lunch. Victoria declined. She was not hungry. She was not anything except determined. At 2:45 in the afternoon, the elevator doors opened, and Darian Cole stepped out. He was dressed simply dark slacks, a gray sweater, no tie. He carried a briefcase in one hand and his phone in the other. He walked across the lobby without looking in her direction, heading toward the hallway that led to the offices. Victoria stood quickly. "Mr. Cole." He stopped, turned. His eyes met hers, and for 3 long seconds he said nothing. Then he continued walking. Victoria felt something crack inside her chest. She sat back down. The receptionist looked away, uncomfortable. 15 minutes later, the receptionist's phone rang. She answered, listened, then hung up and looked at Victoria. "Mr. Cole will see you now." Victoria followed her down the hallway to a small office at the end. The receptionist knocked, opened the door, and gestured for Victoria to enter. The office was not what she expected. No massive desk, no expensive art on the walls, just a simple workspace with a bookshelf, a couch, and a desk covered in files. On the shelf were framed photos Darian and a little girl at the beach, at a park, at a school play. Darian sat behind the desk, his hands folded in front of him. He did not stand when she entered. He did not offer her a seat. Victoria closed the door and stood in the center of the room. "Mr. Cole, he raised a hand. "Miss Ashford, I don't need to hear about your company." She stopped. "Then what do you need to hear?" He leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. I want to ask you one question, and I want an honest answer. Victoria nodded. Darian spoke slowly, his voice measured. Yesterday, if I hadn't been a billionaire, if I had just been a black man in jeans walking into your meeting, would you have treated me differently? The question landed like a stone in her stomach. She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it, because the truth was sitting right there between them, and they both knew it. Yes, she said finally. Her voice was barely a whisper. I would have. Darian nodded. He did not look surprised. He looked tired. 3 years ago, he said, my wife got sick. Cancer. Stage 4. I took her to the emergency room one night because she couldn't breathe. We sat in the waiting area for 2 hours. A nurse came out, looked at us, looked at me, and I saw it in her face. She thought I didn't have insurance. She thought I was going to be a problem. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving Victoria's. My wife died in that hospital, and I will never forget the way that nurse looked at me, like I was less than human, like I didn't deserve basic respect. Victoria felt her throat tighten. I'm sorry. Darian shook his head. Your apology is for me? Or for the investment? The question cut through her like glass. She wanted to say it was for him. She wanted to believe it. But standing there in his office, surrounded by photos of his daughter, she realized she did not know the answer. I don't know, she admitted. For the first time, something shifted in Darian's expression. Not approval, but acknowledgement. At least you're honest, he said. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the gray sky. Here's what I'm thinking, Miss Ashford. Your company is dying. 237 people are going to lose their jobs. Families, parents, people who depend on that paycheck to feed their kids. He turned back to face her. I don't want to punish them for your mistake. So I'm going to make you an offer. But it comes with conditions. 3 of them. And they're not negotiable. Victoria's heart was pounding. I'm listening. Darian walked back to his desk and pulled out a folder. He set it in front of her. First, you hold a press conference. You publicly acknowledge what you did. No PR spin, no corporate language. You tell the truth. Victoria stared at the folder. And the second? You step down as CEO. You'll stay on as Chief Operating Officer, but you'll report to a new CEO. Someone I choose. Her hands went cold. You want me to give up my position. I want you to accept the consequences of your actions, Darian said. You humiliated me in public. You'll own your mistake in public. Victoria's mind raced. 3 years of work. 3 years of proving herself. And now she was supposed to just hand it over. And the third condition? She asked. Darian's voice softened, but only slightly. You implement real change. Diversity training. Transparent hiring practices. A company culture where respect isn't optional. I'll be watching. And if I see this was just a performance to get my money, I'll pull out. Immediately. Victoria looked down at the folder. Inside were the terms, laid out in clear, precise language. She could sign it and save the company. Or she could walk away and let 237 people lose their jobs because of her pride. She thought about her father's voice. Never let them see you weak. But maybe weakness wasn't the problem. Maybe the problem was thinking strength meant never admitting you were wrong. She picked up the pen on the desk. If I do this, she said quietly, if I sign this and follow through, will you believe I can change? Darian met her eyes. I don't know yet, but I'm willing to find out. Victoria signed the document. 3 days later, she stood at a podium in a hotel conference room, facing a crowd of reporters, employees, and board members. The cameras were rolling. There was no script. Darian had been clear about that. She gripped the edges of the podium and took a breath. 3 days ago, she began, her voice steady but quiet. I publicly humiliated a good man. I refused to shake his hand. I had him removed from a business meeting. I did this because of the way he was dressed and the color of his skin. The room was silent. She could see employees in the back, watching her with expressions she could not read. I didn't do this because I'm a bad person, she continued. I did it because I was operating from a place of fear and prejudice I didn't even realize I had. I looked at Darian Cole and made assumptions. I saw what I expected to see instead of who he actually was. Her hands trembled slightly. She pressed them flat against the podium. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I'm here to take responsibility. Effective immediately, I'm stepping down as CEO. I'll remain with the company as Chief Operating Officer, not to save face, but to help rebuild what I damaged. Because this isn't just about me. It's about 237 people who depend on this company, and they deserve better than what I gave them. She looked directly into the nearest camera. If you're an employee here, I'm sorry I created a culture where respect wasn't the foundation. That changes today. If you're watching this and you've ever been treated the way I treated Mr. Cole, I see you, and I'm sorry. She stepped back from the podium. The reporters erupted with questions, but she did not answer them. She walked off the stage, through the side door, and into the hallway beyond. Her assistant was waiting there, holding her coat. The woman's eyes were red. That took courage, the assistant said softly. Victoria shook her head. No, courage would have been treating him with respect in the first place. She put on her coat and walked out of the building. Her phone was already buzzing with messages. Some were supportive. Many were not. Her social media mentions were a mix of praise and condemnation. Some people believed her. Others thought it was a publicity stunt. She turned off her phone and got into her car. That night, alone in her apartment, she sat on the floor and cried for the first time in years. Not because she had lost her position, not because she was embarrassed, but because she finally understood what she had done. She had looked at another human being and decided he did not matter, and that realization was heavier than anything else she had ever carried. Across the country, Darian sat on his couch with Emma curled up beside him. The press conference had been streaming live. He had watched it in silence. Emma looked up at him. Is that the lady you told me about? Darian nodded. Yes. Sweetheart, she said she was sorry. She did. Emma thought about this for a moment. Do you believe her? Darian looked at his daughter's serious little face. So much like her mother's. So full of faith in the world. I don't know yet, he said honestly. But I think she's trying, and that's a start. Emma nodded, satisfied, and returned her attention to the book in her lap. Darian leaned back and closed his eyes. He thought about the drawing in his wallet. He thought about his wife. He thought about the choice he had made not to let Victoria's company fail, but to give her a chance to prove she could be better. It was a risk, but some risks were worth taking, because Emma was watching, and the world she would inherit depended on people being willing to change. The first week after the press conference was the hardest. Victoria woke each morning to a flood of emails. Some were kind. Many were not. Former colleagues stopped responding to her messages. Invitations to galas and networking events quietly disappeared. A friend from business school sent a single text. I can't believe you threw away everything we worked for. Victoria did not reply. She had nothing to say that would make sense to someone who had not stood in that hotel lobby and felt the weight of what she had done. On Monday morning, she returned to the office as Chief Operating Officer. The new CEO arrived that same day. Her name was Angela Reeves, a black woman in her early 50s with 20 years of experience turning around struggling companies. She had kind eyes and a firm handshake. Their first meeting was brief. I've read the reports, Angela said, sitting across from Victoria in what used to be Victoria's office. The company's structure is sound. The problem was the culture. That's what we're going to fix. Victoria nodded. I'll do whatever you need. Angela studied her for a moment. Mr. Cole told me you might actually mean that. I guess we'll find out. The changes came quickly. Angela implemented mandatory training on unconscious bias. She brought in consultants to review hiring practices. She held town halls where employees could speak openly about their experiences without fear of retaliation. Victoria attended every session. She sat in the back and listened. Some of what she heard made her uncomfortable. One employee, a young black man in the marketing department, spoke about being told he should dress more professionally when he wore the same style of clothes as his white colleagues. Another woman, Latina, talked about being mistaken for cleaning staff 3 times in her first month despite wearing a company badge. Victoria had never noticed these things before. Or maybe she had noticed and chosen not to see. After one particularly difficult session, she stayed late in her office, reviewing hiring records from the past 3 years. The patterns were undeniable. Certain names got interviews, others did not. Certain backgrounds were favored, others were overlooked. She had built this system. She had perpetuated it. Angela found her there at 9 o'clock that night, surrounded by spreadsheets and reports. "You can't fix 3 years in one evening," Angela said from the doorway. Victoria looked up. "I have to try." Angela stepped into the office and sat down. "Why?" The question caught Victoria off guard. "Because it's the right thing to do." "Is it?" Angela's tone was not unkind, but it was direct. "Or is it because you're trying to prove something to Darian Cole?" Victoria considered this. "Maybe both." Angela nodded. "That's fair. Just make sure you're also doing it for the right people. The ones who work here. The ones who've been dealing with this culture long before you decided to change it." Victoria closed her laptop. "How do I do that?" "You keep showing up," Angela said simply. "You keep listening. You keep learning. And when you mess up again, because you will, you own it and do better next time." 6 months passed. The company stabilized. Darian's investment kept them afloat long enough to restructure. New clients came in, old clients stayed. The culture shifted slowly, then faster. Employees began speaking up in meetings. New hires came from more diverse backgrounds. The office felt different, lighter. Victoria worked longer hours than she ever had as CEO. She attended community events. She volunteered with organizations focused on racial justice and workplace equity. Not for publicity, not for redemption, but because she was learning things she should have known all along. One afternoon, she was walking through the office when she saw a man standing near the reception desk. He was black, dressed in jeans and a plain t-shirt, carrying a backpack. Her first instinct was immediate and familiar. "He's not supposed to be here." She felt the thought before she could stop it. Then she stopped walking. She recognized the reflex for what it was, the same reflex that had cost her everything 6 months ago. She took a breath and walked over to him. "Hi," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Victoria. Can I help you with something?" The man smiled and shook her hand. "I'm Marcus. Today's my first day. I'm the new software engineer." Victoria smiled back. "Welcome to the team. Let me get someone to show you around." It was a small moment, unremarkable. But as she walked away, she felt something shift inside her chest. Not pride, not relief, just the quiet recognition that she had made a different choice. A week later, a journalist reached out for an interview. She wanted to do a follow-up story on Victoria's transformation. Victoria declined politely. This was not about her story. It was about the work. But the attention had not gone away. People still talked. Some praised her courage. Others called her a hypocrite. Darian's name came up often in the coverage. People wanted to know why he had invested in a company led by someone who had disrespected him so publicly. One reporter asked him directly in an interview that went viral. "Why didn't you just let her company fail?" the reporter asked. Darian's answer was calm and measured. "Because 237 people depended on that company for their livelihood. Parents, single mothers, people just trying to take care of their families. They didn't do anything wrong. Why should they suffer for someone else's mistake?" The reporter pressed. "But wasn't she deserving of consequences?" "She got consequences," Darian said. "She lost her position. She lost her reputation. She's facing the reality of what she did every single day. But consequences aren't the same as cruelty. I didn't invest in that company for Victoria Ashford. I invested for the people who needed it. And I invested because I believe people can change if they're willing to do the work." The clip circulated online. Some people agreed. Others argued he had been too soft. But Darian did not respond to the criticism. He had made his choice, and he was at peace with it. At home that evening, Emma asked him about it while they were making dinner together. "Daddy, why did you help that lady if she was mean to you?" Darian set down the wooden spoon and looked at his daughter. Because holding on to anger doesn't help anyone, sweetheart. Your mom used to tell me that. She said we should teach people with love, not with anger. Emma thought about this while she stirred the pasta. Do you think she learned? I think she's trying, Darian said. And that's what matters. 1 year after the press conference, Victoria received an invitation. It was for a charity event supporting single-parent families. The event was being held at the same hotel where everything had fallen apart. She almost did not go. The idea of walking back into that building made her stomach turn. But Angela encouraged her. Face it, Angela said. You can't move forward if you're still running from the past. Victoria arrived early, before the crowd. The hotel lobby looked exactly the same. The chandelier, the marble floors, the tall windows overlooking the city. She stood in the center of the room and remembered the way Darian had looked at her, the way his hand had fallen slowly to his side. It's strange, isn't it? Victoria turned. A woman stood behind her, holding a young girl's hand. The woman was elegant, dressed simply, with a warm smile. The girl looked up at Victoria with bright, curious eyes. I'm sorry? Victoria said. The woman gestured to the room. Coming back to a place where something difficult happened. I'm Angela's friend. She mentioned you might be here tonight. Victoria nodded. It feels different now. It feels different now. That's because you're different, the woman said gently. Then she moved on, guiding the little girl toward the registration table. Victoria watched them go, something tugging at her memory. Then she saw him. Darian Cole stood near the entrance, talking to one of the event organizers. He was dressed in a dark suit, professional and polished. The little girl ran to him, and he scooped her up, laughing. Emma! Victoria's heart tightened. She had not expected him to be here. She had not prepared for this. She considered leaving, slipping out before he saw her. But then Darian looked up, and their eyes met across the room. He set Emma down and said something to her. Then he walked toward Victoria. She forced herself to stay still, to breathe. Darian stopped a few feet away. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Victoria extended her hand. Mr. Cole, she said quietly. Thank you for coming. Darian looked down at her hand. The room seemed to hold its breath. Then he reached out and took it. His grip was firm and warm. Miss Ashford, he said, it's good to see you. They stood there, hands clasped, and Victoria felt the weight of the past year settle between them. The humiliation, the apology, the work, the change. Emma appeared at Darian's side, looking up at Victoria with open curiosity. Daddy, is this the lady you told me about? Darian smiled down at his daughter. Yes, sweetheart. This is Miss Victoria. She taught Daddy that people can change if they really want to. Victoria knelt down so she was at eye level with Emma. The girl had her father's eyes, bright and clear and full of trust. Your dad is a wonderful man, Victoria said softly. And I hope that when you grow up, you'll live in a world that's better than the one I helped create. A world where people are judged by who they are, not what they look like. Emma smiled. Daddy says you're trying really hard. Victoria's throat tightened. I am, every day. Emma nodded, satisfied, and took her father's hand again. Can we get snacks now? Darian laughed. Go ahead. I'll catch up. Emma ran off toward the refreshment table. Darian and Victoria stood together, watching her go. She's beautiful, Victoria said. She's my reason for everything, Darian replied. Then he looked at Victoria. I've been following your work, the changes at the company, the volunteer work. Angela says you're serious about it. Victoria met his eyes. I am. I know I can't undo what I did, but I can try to make sure it doesn't happen again. Not on my watch. Darian nodded slowly. That's all any of us can do. Keep trying. Keep learning. They stood together in silence for a moment. Two people who had been on opposite sides of a painful moment and had somehow found their way to something quieter. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not yet. But understanding. Thank you, Victoria said finally. for giving me the chance to do better. Darian shook his head. I didn't give you anything. You did the work. Don't forget that. He turned to follow his daughter, then stopped and looked back. Miss Ashford? Yes? Keep going. The world needs more people willing to change. Then he walked away, back to Emma, back to his life. Victoria stood alone in the center of the lobby, the same lobby where she had destroyed everything. But it felt different now. She felt different. She took a breath and walked toward the event hall. There was work to do. There was always work to do. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was walking in the right direction. You don't need to be a billionaire to deserve respect. But if you have power and use it to diminish others, the price you pay will be real. And if you're brave enough to admit your mistakes and change, that's where real power begins.